Welcome to another episode of Well-Adjusted Mama. This is a podcast dedicated to educating and empowering women from preconception, pregnancy, birth, and through early motherhood on wellness lifestyle. I'm your host, Dr. Laura Brayton, and I'm a maternity pediatric chiropractor and mother who has hand-selected experts in natural holistic healthcare specialties to shine light on options and choices during this exciting phase of a woman's life. Today's episode, we are focusing on the big C. We're going to talk about why preventing cancer requires looking at your whole body's health. And I am so honored and privileged to have brought on my guest speaker, Katrina Foe. Katrina knows that when we look at health, we should be looking at the body as a whole, which is totally in alignment with me. A second-generation Pilates instructor and owner of Personalized Pilates in Scottsdale, Arizona, Katrina was trained by Lolita San Miguel before teaching alongside her as her anatomy teacher. She has run her Pilates studio from another state for over 10 years, and over the past 20 years, she has trained over 1,000 Pilates instructors worldwide with her innovative online Pilates teacher training program. While online, her Pilates teacher training program is structured very intentionally so that students leave with a profound understanding and deep skills without being overwhelmed. After addressing her own cancer 100% naturally, Katrina knew she had to expand her way of looking at the body as a whole. She became board certified in holistic nutrition and trained to read functional labs. Now a certified metabolic approach to cancer practitioner, Katrina is faculty at Restorative Wellness Solutions, where they address the root cause of why cancer was allowed to proliferate, how to put cancer into remission, and work to educate clients on how to keep it there so they don't have to live in fear of recurrence. Hi, Katrina. Welcome to the show. I'm very excited to have you on today.
Hi, I'm so excited to talk with you today.
So we're going to talk, our topic today is why preventing cancer requires looking at your whole body's health. And essentially, you're going to tell your story and how you've become an expert in this topic. And cancer is not a topic that I cover often on Well-Adjusted Mama because we're speaking to pregnant new mamas, and there's an assumption that doesn't equate to a cancer patient, right? So I'm very excited for your story to be shared and for women listening to learn from it.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's something that's important.
It's very important. So tell me about how you became an expert. You were a Pilates instructor, you still are, and now you're an expert in treating and preventing cancer.
Yeah. So I got into the cancer world from my own journey. So I was nursing baby number 5 and had a mastitis, which I'm like, no big deal. I've dealt with this before, do all my things. And it went away, but the big lump did not go away. And it was about a golf ball size, which was a lot larger than a usual mastitis in my understanding from my body. And I was like, okay, well, something's weird, whatever. We'll just let it go. Because the woman's breasts, it changes so much while you're nursing and such. But my mom and my husband were a little like, I think you should look into this. And it turns out that it was breast cancer, which I totally did not see coming. I mean, we had been working so much on our health to the point where we were looking to raise our own animals so we could have really clean sourced food and everything. And we moved up to Idaho. I mean, we're talking kind of on the extreme side. And it blew my mind. Like, how in the world, what did I miss? Like, what's going on? How does this happen when I've been doing all the right things, so to speak?
Right. Yeah. And so the diagnosis came while you were in your postpartum period with your 5th child. You have 7 now.
Yes.
God bless. So what happened? Did you go to your doctor? I mean, how did this all come out?
Yeah. So I basically said, okay, let's reevaluate everything because clearly something I'm doing is not working. And I need to look at like, okay, maybe I need to go to raw vegan. That was the cool thing back then for cancer. And so I tried some of that. I got kicked out of a cancer clinic, a whole bunch of stuff. And eventually I found a functional practitioner that started running a whole bunch of tests on me, things that I kind of thought were not helpful, not really relevant at the time. Like, she's running stuff. I'm like, I know my vitamin D has to be good. I've been taking cod liver oil for years. Like, oh wait, it's in the toilet. What? Like all sorts of things kept showing up. Like I didn't realize that my thyroid was super sluggish. I didn't realize, on and on and on, because I'd never done any testing. I'd never looked at anything to see what was really going on behind the scenes. It was just this kind of, well, I'm doing all the right things, so it must be working.
Right. And it wasn't, obviously. There was something off. I think one thing I really want to point out here is cancer is not the enemy, right? Cancer is an awareness that there is something off, and it's an opportunity to make changes. And essentially it's an awakening, right? Like what you're doing, something you're doing is not working, and there's not a shame or a blame there. It's just, what do we need to learn from this?
Exactly. I feel so grateful on this side of it to look back and see all the stuff that I prevented, further consequences, as well as just the journey to becoming a practitioner myself, which has been incredibly, incredibly beneficial. But ultimately, for me, the cancer was really a method of me seeing like how metabolically broken I was when I didn't have any symptoms. And this is one of the things I see all the time, with clients. They have, some insulin resistance. They don't feel bad. And I wish I could just like scream this from the rafters. Like, people don't get that. They're like, I'm fine. I don't have hypoglycemia. I'm like, yeah, but the other side with the insulin resistance, you don't feel bad. And I felt great being all hyped up on, carbs all day long, and my body was not regulating it. And that was ultimately feeding the cancer. There were a lot of other things. I was estrogen dominant, which is really common, but not good. And then the kicker, this is the one I really didn't get, was that we had moved into a house that had black mold and removed it ourselves with no masks. Like, we had no idea, about 8 months before the cancer. And it was a carcinogenic form of mold. And so these are huge things. And I look with my clients now, like, rarely do I have a cancer client that doesn't have mold issues. This is a really big thing that people aren't talking about.
Wow. Yeah. And so these are aha moments. And it's not about really, once again, having fear around this. It's just really having an awareness and education about where there are little areas of your life. Like, your lifestyle generally was very healthy, and there were still areas that needed to be cleaned up, right? And so it's like kind of going to the next level of health and wellness.
Absolutely. And one thing I hear all the time from my clients is like, well, how am I so depleted? I'm so sick, but my husband's fine with this mold. And that's the $1 million question, because a lot of times the man is leaving the house to go to his work. The man didn't birth X amount of children, which I don't think our society gives enough credit to how much that depletes your body as a woman. It's kind of like thought of as this passive thing, but it is so draining on our resources, and we don't replenish well enough between babies, in my opinion. So you put that in there and combine in some, funky SNPs and stuff genetically. And yeah, it makes total sense. My husband was the one that ripped the mold out, not me. And he's totally fine.
It's so true. I was reading like a traditional wisdom book about pregnancy, since you brought that up. And it really takes about 3 to 5 years for the body to recover between pregnancies. And we rarely see women give that amount of time between, because for multiple reasons. They want to have 7 children, or they're an older mom, which I see a lot in my area. Women don't even have their first baby until they're 40, let's say. So there's a real clock that's ticking. And so, if we start giving birth when we're 18, then there's more an opportunity to spread them out. But it's not always reality, right? But this is a real thing. And, the postpartum recovery is not just for trimester. It goes on for a long time for a woman's body to really heal and recover nutritionally from everything that the baby sucked out of her, essentially, to create itself.
Yeah. And not only just nutrients, I would say a lot of it's going to be just imbalances. So the thyroid a lot of times gets really wonky after a baby. A lot of times things like Hashimoto's will develop postpartum, like the estrogen dominance, if the hormones don't go back to a nice synergistic balance. There's a lot of things like that. The blood sugar is a big one too, but these hormones all need attention, and people don't bother with that. Yeah, it's a big thing.
They are. And that's all part of the endocrine system, right? Like the blood sugar is connected from the pancreas, is connected to the adrenals and the thyroid and the ovaries and to the hypothalamus. So these glands are all very intimately connected. And if there is, stressors in the body from a pregnancy or from other sources, it can create imbalances in other areas. So it is real. So I think, if hindsight's 2020, if you were to look back, you said like, oh, you didn't have any symptoms. You didn't notice, there was nothing that you noticed that you're like, oh, that was a red flag before you found that lump.
I had a couple things. I had some weight that just was kind of stubborn. I mean, it wasn't 100 pounds or anything, but it was enough to be like, but most people just chalk that up to, oh, you just had a baby. I had some hair loss that was more than probably should be, cold extremities, things like that. But overall, not really. Like, that's one of the biggest things, is that a lot of times people assume that you have to have symptoms for all these things, especially with mold. There's a lot of wide variety of symptoms for mold, and I didn't really have any of them. My stuff was showing up more neurological. So I was unhappy. I was tired. I was run down. I was just not loving life, which is hard.
That is. And also I would say culturally, people are like, oh, well, you're breastfeeding a baby, taking care of, 4 others. Like, of course you're going to be tired, right? Like, that's a lot of work. But yeah, it's interesting. So I think, one of the lessons here is to, with that mind-body connection, is to really tap in when things are a little bit off and to listen to those signals. They don't have to be screaming in your face type of symptoms to warrant attention. And then what else? I mean, I know you're really a lot into, testing, and you don't have to have symptoms to get tested. So you want to talk about like what test you would recommend for the average woman to look in and see preventively what's going on with her health?
Yeah. So a lot of times I'll start with a basic blood. I shouldn't say basic. It's rather comprehensive compared to what the doctors are doing. I don't want just a CBC and a CMP. I want to get the homocysteine, and I want to get the iron panel, and I want to get, all the different things to look more in depth at what's going on and see the connections between the different systems. Depending on symptoms, a lot of times it's good to do some tox panels to see what toxins are bothering them. Like I said, the mold, but there can be other things, heavy metals, non-metal toxins. And again, you won't necessarily feel symptoms of this. I'm always shocked with what comes back on those panels. If hormones are really off, doing a nice Dutch panel is fantastic.
It is.
But it gets tricky because you had your period for a few months before you do that to really get accurate results, in my opinion. And then the thyroid would be thrown in with the blood work, and then the adrenals.
And a complete thyroid panel, not just a TSH.
Yes, with the antibodies, both thyroglobulin and TPO, because I can't tell you how many times that comes up and no one runs it. And those thyroid antibodies make such a big difference in terms of what you can do to, feel better and get things in remission.
Right, because that's indicative of Hashimoto's and an autoimmune condition. And the TSH could be completely normal, or at least within range, right? So
absolutely. And especially when the hypothalamus and pituitary and the brain, they're in charge of all those endocrine hormones. And when they're, we'll just say funky and doing strange things, which is really common postpartum, they're going to have a trickle down effect to all the other hormones. And so when you see the whole thyroid panel, then you can see, oh, this isn't really, the thyroid's fault. It might be more the brain's fault kind of thing.
Right, exactly. And there's solutions for that. So if somebody comes back with their test results off, I mean, what are the next steps for them?
Well, that's where we would look at the whole person and see what's going on in terms of giving some recommendations for diet, lifestyle and supplements. So we like to really turn things around fairly quickly if possible, because who knows, that mama may want to have another baby. There may be things going on. And so by looking at all of them, not just some supplements, but at the diet and lifestyle as well, getting the sleep patterns to help with circadian rhythm right will help hugely. And a lot of times there's things that you can do to problem solve with a new mama to get things to, just work better in terms of their lifestyle of, okay, can dad do this? Can somebody step in and help you with that? Because a lot of times I find new mamas don't like to ask for help. They want to be the super mom. They want to do it all, but they're drowning and they need help.
Yeah, that's so true. A theme every episode is mama self-care. And part of this mama self-care is scheduling an appointment with a functional medicine provider who's going to be able to do these types of tests. And there's so much more information than you're going to get from an average annual exam or even your 6-week, postpartum checkup, for example. So it's a lot more extensive.
Yeah. The lab ranges are really different. So the lab testing, the labs have their own ranges given, and those are created by the average of whoever takes the test, and then 2 standard deviations. Well, who takes the test? Yeah, the sick people are taking the test, and that's creating those big, wide, huge margins called the lab ranges. It has nothing to do with where people are healthy. And that's where in functional medicine, we're looking at the functional ranges, which are where people are actually feeling good.
Yes.
That
we're looking for optimal.
Exactly. That thyroid's where I see the most people get screwed up in terms of being told by their doctor that it's fine. And then I'm looking at this going, oh, it is not fine. Because the TSH range, which is usually the only marker they run, is 0.5 to 5.5. It's this huge range. And I like it between 1 and 2, closer to 1. And, so if somebody comes in and they're at 2.5, 3, their doctor is going to be like, you're fine, go away. And they feel like somebody just told them it's all in your head. You're crazy. And to me, when I hear that, it makes me sad because I've been there and I know that that's not fun to be told, because women usually know when they're not right. And when they're going to a doctor asking for help, that's hard. And they need that validation of you're not crazy. This is a real thing.
It's so true that my last podcast guest was talking about the hand waving. It's just like, everything's fine, get over it, blah, blah. And it's just not really, it's very disrespectful to the person who's in front of you, especially an intuitive person, i.e. women, who are like, I know something's wrong. I know it's not in my head, psychological. And just because you don't know the answer doesn't mean that there's not something wrong here. And I'm looking for help. And I think, there's an awareness okay, if you have a limiting education and you don't have an answer, then you can just respectfully refer, right? That would be the ideal thing, right? Okay, let's try something, maybe this person will have more answers, instead of just saying no, right? Exactly. It's like an ego thing or something.
Oh, it's so huge. I tell my clients all the time, when someone says that that there's nothing wrong with you, and insinuate that you're a hypochondriac, it's really more about the fact that they just don't have the answers and they're not going to admit it, which is arrogant.
Yeah, it's very arrogant. Nobody knows all of the answers. And that's what really in healthcare, a team approach is ideal, because we all have something different to add to the whole person's healing, starting with that person themselves, right? They have the most part participation in the game, but we can get a little bit from everyone and all work together.
Exactly. That's the best way to approach it.
Yeah, totally. So I want to go back to talking a little bit more about cancer. And for women listening, if they have been recently diagnosed, I'd like for you to also share your story at how you healed yourself naturally.
Well, my story was a little bit of a sideways jog. So I got all the functional testing done, and I started along my journey of working on those, like I said, diet, lifestyle, supplement changes. And I'm like, I got this.
Can I just back up for a second? When you got diagnosed, I'm assuming the oncologist was like radiation, chemo, or lumpectomy or whatever. You were presented with only those options or something in that realm?
Well, that's a good question. I actually was not, because I did not go the standard of care route. I knew from the beginning, from experiences with friends, that what they're offering in terms of cutting and poisoning and radiating, like, actually cause cancer. And to me, like, why would I do something that causes cancer to try to get rid of it? Like, that didn't make any sense. And I knew intuitively that if I went in there, that was what I was going to be offered. And if I didn't want that, why did I go in there? So my diagnosis actually was from a blood test. I had 2 different ones that are no longer on the market here, but they are on the market in Europe. Yeah, kind of interesting. So yeah, I've had people say, oh, well, you didn't really have cancer. I'm like, okay, well, you can play that game, but I don't need to, to prove it to anybody.
Yeah. Can you
So
tell me what year this was?
this was back in 15.
Okay.
And so I started doing, diet changes, lifestyle, boatloads of supplements. You have no idea how many supplements. And I was feeling very confident I had this. And I went to a retreat, and I really struggled with going to the retreat because I'm like, they're not going to be eating good food, blah, blah, blah. But I really felt in my heart, I need to go. And the whole time at the retreat, this was just a random women's retreat. It was not some specific cancer retreat or anything. I just had this impression at every breakout session that I needed to go home and be with my husband in the biblical sense. And that was kind of weird. And I'm like, okay, seriously, I just did my hormone retest. I know what that is. I don't think that's a good idea. People are already kind of pissed at me that I am doing things naturally anyways. But I actually did. And that's when we got pregnant with baby number 6.
Oh, okay. I was like, where are you going with this story?
I know, it's a little weird. So now I have cancer. I get pregnant. I'm doing things naturally. Most of the stuff I can't do anymore because I'm pregnant.
Right. It was very detoxing, which we don't do once we're pregnant.
Right. So I'm like, I was a little freaked out. I'm like, is this going to work? Where are you taking me, God? But one thing led to another. I stopped. I had a friend who had cancer, and she kept telling me things like, oh, I can feel it going down. And I'm like, how the hell can you feel that going down? Like millimeters? Like, that's not possible. But it was making me a little crazy. So I'm like, I am not going to touch it. I am not going to think about it. And within a month of the birth, I could not find the tumor. I checked it again, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the whole golf ball is gone. I don't even know how that worked. So it was a crazy cool experience. I had a very, very severe anemia, which I think probably played a part in it, because maybe the ferroptosis or something going on. But again, I don't have like super, detailed tests and everything along that way. But here's the interesting part. So about, I get done nursing. I gave it a year because it wasn't like the tumor was gone. And I'm like, I need to go back to the functional work that I was doing, because I didn't finish that. And I want to make sure that this is taken care of. Whatever was an issue is taken care of. And my doctor recommended me to Dr. Mercola's book, Fat for Fuel. And by the time I first argued, I'm like, no, that's dangerous. That's like, you shouldn't take out a whole food group. That's crazy. And she's like, Katrina, read the book. And I'm like, okay. So I read the book. And by the time I was done, I was doing it. I was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. The science is there. And in about 3 months, I was starting to feel better. And I noticed that a lot of symptoms were gone, the neurological symptoms. So I had been diagnosed bipolar from a teenager. I had stopped the drugs like in my early mid-20s because I felt awful on them and they didn't help. And all of a sudden now I wasn't feeling my symptoms. And I didn't really want to say anything because I'm like, maybe this is just a passing thing. I don't know. But my daughter, all of a sudden, we were doing a thing at family worship one night, and my husband was talking about being joyful in all things. And I said, and he was giving the example of a friend who had recently lost their house, and the community was building it back up. And it was really cool to see the blessing of everybody coming around. My daughter pops up and she goes, well, like mommy's cancer. And me and my husband were like, what is she talking about? And she goes, well, if mommy hadn't had cancer, she wouldn't have tried keto. And now she's happy.
Oh.
So,
wow.
Right? It was super powerful. And just the idea that the cancer was actually the answer to my prayers for so many years. And the whole process was really amazing. And going through into that, it was further into the becoming a practitioner was a whole nother level.
Wow. So I have not yet read Dr. Mercola's book, but essentially you took out carbs is what you're saying, and you just had a high fat, high protein diet.
Yeah, it's high fat, moderate protein, very low carbs, which you're still getting carbs because you are eating lots of vegetables, just not the like potato vegetables. It's the, cucumbers and kale and broccoli and such. But that was, I have to tell you, that was the weirdest, hardest transition because I was a carb girl. I could live on carbs. But that was not doing my body any good. And I fought it. Honestly, I was kind of pissy about it for a while. And now I'm like, this is just what my body needs. I just didn't know it. And it wasn't, what our culture was doing. It wasn't PC. So I didn't ever think about trying this, but the whole way, the mechanism, the Warburg effect, the actual definition of how cancer is defined is that in the mitochondria, a cell will stop using oxygen to make fuel, and it will go into where it's using an anaerobic state, not using oxygen. And that takes a lot more glucose, so the blood sugar. So much so that it starts creating its own blood vessel support called angiogenesis to get more and more blood sugar. And this is how a PET scan works. They feed you radioactive sugar, and then they watch where all the sugar goes and how big it is, where the areas that the sugar is going to and such. So this is known, since I think it's like the 30s that Otto Warburg won the Nobel Prize for understanding this. But yet in chemotherapy rooms, they're still giving candy and here, have some cookies and juice. This is insane. But we have the research showing that fasting before chemo is more effective. It'll get the chemo into the right spot better. But we don't use that. It drives me crazy.
Yeah, sugar is very inflammatory, right? Especially processed sugar. So we can see why, that very much fuels the growth of cancer. But yeah, the cancer is, I was thinking about that before we came on the episode today. Like there's the war against cancer and fuck cancer and all this like anger and rage around cancer because it's created a lot of, sadness and loss and fear, right? But there really is blessings that come from this diagnosis, or honestly, from the prevention of just really recognizing, this is something that we can have power over and not be disempowered from, right?
Absolutely.
We don't have to live in fear of it.
You don't have to live in fear of it. And I think the fear that people put out there in the standard care, especially, it's really more a sales technique, which kind of irritates me because people don't take responsibility for their health. We as a culture don't. And so they don't take the time because they're pressured into, let's do stuff yesterday. They don't have time to research and everything. And they feel like they're going to be crazy. And I mean, for me, like I am so incredibly grateful, not only because of the mental relief that I got, but I'm looking and watching my mom and dad with dementia. And I'm like, that is fueled by blood sugar dysregulation as well. They're calling it type 3 diabetes now. And knowing what I know now, I can prevent that both for me and my sister. We're working on this to make sure that we're not going to end up there. And quite frankly, like losing my brain, that sounds worse than cancer to me.
Totally. And, both your bipolar diagnosis and in other, dementia, Alzheimer's, those are also, they're not only inflammation of the brain, but there's very much a fat component, right? Because our brain is mostly made of fat. Our nervous system is fat, and there's inflammatory fats, and then there's these healthy, good fats. So the standard American diet is loaded with not only inflammatory sugars and carbs, but a lot of the fats, those trans fatty acids, fried foods, things like that. And every time we put that in our body, it just is like lighting our nervous system on fire, which includes our brain, right? So diet plays a big part of that as well.
Exactly. That's a huge thing. And I talk about that in the book, and I talk about that with my clients all the time. It's not just the carbs, it's the quality of fats. And to me, the quality of fats it sounds almost blasphemous, but it's more important than the the veggies being organic in a lot of ways, because if you're eating like 80% of your calories as fat, like those are really important. And people just dismiss it all the time. I mean, I feel a little overboard with the looking at the different fats and stuff. And it's like, I'm not going to eat the potato chips. It's not the carbs. It's the bad fats they're usually cooked in. I mean, they're rancid and toxic like no other.
Yeah, totally. So this is, really important things for people to consider as they're making conscious choices. And also, this is worth putting out there. This isn't just food we're putting in our bodies as mamas, but what are we putting in our children's bodies? I can't tell you. Sometimes I have women that are very nutritionally oriented in my practice, and really reading all the labels for what they eat, and are not for their children. Their children are eating that standard American diet that is classified as children's food. It's what we see on children's menus in most restaurants. It's all processed. It's all inflammatory. It's all chemicals. It's not real food. And our children deserve better. Like, they are growing little bodies that need healthy, nutritious food. So we really have an awareness. Ideally, the whole family, right, is eating cleaner.
Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned that. I just like, yes. So with the going out to eat, like I don't even ask for the kid menus. I'm like, no, that's all the junk. Like, my kids can eat the, salmon and steak off the adult menus and stuff. They love that. My kids are little foodies. And I think it's more than just, I want to take a step further what you're saying. It's not just having them eat, that you make sure they eat good food, but teaching them to want the good food so that when they leave your house, they're still going to do it because they understand how it nourishes, and they understand the chemistry. They understand that you only get one body. And, when you're 20, you feel invincible. You feel like nothing's, okay, whatever, but, I'll be fine. And you're not.
No, it is a modeling. And you're right. It's really, I can even relate to this because I was raised eating really like food from our garden. And then I got my driver's license and I was going to Burger King, right? And eating crap at Burger King and gained 20 pounds. But it wasn't just the weight gain. It was like, bleh, like I definitely didn't have that same clarity in my mind and the energy. And this was like in high school going into college, right? And it took a few years for me to get the message, but luckily then it was like, oh, I'm going to get rid of all these chemicals, and the weight immediately came off, because weight gain is really a lot of times it's where the toxins are stored in our body, right? In the fat. So when we detox, the weight will naturally just come off. So, these are good, important lessons. And I do think that when we show that to our children and model that for our children, it's going to click. Or if they go to a friend's house and have the crap food at their friend's house and be like, oh, my stomach hurts. It's like, well, that's what happens when you eat crap, and it's sometimes good to have that, comparison, right? Of the good versus bad.
I think it's important to bring their attention to those times. Those are the teachable moments to really open it up and let's discuss this. And, another big part of it that I'm really passionate about is teaching the kids how to cook, so that they have ownership of planning the meals and discussing why, maybe that's not the greatest choice. What could we do different? And, looking at all those aspects so that they get skilled in it before they leave the house, and they can help the family tremendously. I mean, people ask me how I do what I do. That's how I do what I do, because it's a family affair and everybody pitches in, but they're getting the side benefit of learning about how to cook and take care of their bodies that they'll be able to use the rest of their life.
That is so important. So talk to me about what age you introduce that, and you have all the range in your house now, right? So how does that work?
My youngest is 3 and my oldest just turned 16, which is kind of crazy feeling. We start them at a very young age, more appropriately doing, some different little sous chef kind of stuff. I teach them how to use knives properly, not when they're 3, but a little older, and getting them, used to, when they're 3, they're doing things like, can you go get me the butter out of the fridge, and stuff like that. And can you sort these, or, whatever it is, little things that are appropriate. But by the time that they are, I'd say like 8 or 9, they can cook a meal. Now it's not, super fancy. My 10 to 16-year-olds, there's 4 of them in that age range, and they rotate between doing, we call it the meal prep. And so they do the meal planning, they do the actual meal cooking for the whole week. And they're on rotation. So, I mean, just to give some of those moms out there, some ideas, it is possible. Now, I will say we kind of cheat because we homeschool, so they have more time in the kitchen. So they get, lunches and stuff too. But it's so nice. And my kids can cook really cool things. They're cooking roasting duck and doing crazy stuff.
Are they like researching recipes and being like, oh, I want to try this? And then I guess like you're saying, one child plans the meals for 1 week. And then I'm assuming there's some sort of online grocery cart that you get the ingredients delivered. Like, how does that work?
Oh, that's a good question. So we live out in the middle of nowhere. So there's nothing that would come to our house, which would be super cool. We go to Costco like once a month, and we can go to the grocery store during the week for little things, but our grocery has nothing cool. So we keep a well-stocked pantry. So most of the dry goods would already be here. And then it's a matter of the night before looking at, okay, what produce needs to be used? And you get to use that the next day. And that's kind of the defining factor of everything.
Wow. And then like you mentioned, you're on a farm. So some of that's coming from your garden and animals as well. You slaughter your own animals for meat.
Yes. Yeah. We raise our own chickens and cows. So we have those in our freezer. Our garden, which I'm laughing because it's snowing outside right now. So there's no garden right now, but yeah, we do have a big garden in the summer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Wow. This is so inspirational. So I do know that you have a retreat for, is it for men and women who've had cancer and are looking to avoid recurrence?
It's actually just for women, but it could be for people that are, think they might have cancer or want to prevent, all the way to they had cancer and they're in remission, but they know they didn't, deal with it a functional way and they want to get to the root cause kind of thing. So we run all the labs and then we go over them together in a fun way, because I don't feel like the stress that's usually accompanying a diagnosis and everything is needed, because we know stress is one of the drivers of cancer. So why are we making the whole process stressful? So, hey, let's sit by the pool and drink some keto mocktails and get some non-toxic pedicures while we discuss epigenetics, all the stuff in a fun way. Because what I find over and over again, and you probably hear this from your clients as well, that the implementation is really hard. And for moms to kind of get up and out of like, okay, this is my daily routine and I need to now do this weird thing or change the cooking to this. Like a lot of times there's a very steep learning curve in the midst of dealing with daily life. And so we're trying to cut that down and flatten that curve so that people can really, immerse yourself. Every, meal is a cooking class. Let's, really figure out how to do this so that when you go home, it's like, oh, I'm already familiar with the coffee enema. I don't have to do the weird factor thing because I've already done it. I know how to do keto cooking. I'm familiar with this. Okay, I can explore new things, but it's not all foreign.
Yeah, because that's intimidating and overwhelming, and then it just shuts down action. So it's good to have exposure and that community support.
Yes.
To kind of get you going. And like you said, if you've done some of these detox protocols once or a couple times, then it's easier to implement once you get back to your home life and your crazy schedule and all the things. And like, how can I fit this self-care into my day-to-day life?
Yes. And as a mom, that sometimes looks a little weird. I will tell you that I've learned how to do an enema without anyone noticing I'm doing it. And kids will be like coming in now. And I'm like, it's all good because, if you wear a long skirt that's stretchy, you can have it on while you're doing it. And nobody even knows.
Wow. You have so many tricks up your sleeve.
You have to when you have lots of kids,
You really do. You really, really do. I bet your house is very organized too.
Yeah, I would like it to be. I wouldn't say it is though. It's one of those things like letting the kids in the kitchen and having free reign. I find that really helps encourage them to be playful in the kitchen. And yet it encourages a little bit less organization.
Mm,
So letting go of some of the control was one of the great gifts that cancer gave me, because I realized it doesn't actually make my life better. It just
right.
makes everyone stressed.
Right. I do feel like when it comes to the birthing process, surrendering control is the ultimate feminine, right? When it comes to birthing a baby. And there's a lesson to be learned from that, because that is motherhood, right? Like we cannot, as much as we want to control our kids, there's just like, they're their own little beings. And the more we try to, enforce the control, the more the rebellious, like, I don't think so.
Absolutely. That's very well put. Yeah. I feel like the control is like a layers of an onion. You peel a layer back, and then the next year you got another layer to peel back. And there's more and more of like, it comes up over and over again. And it's hard. It's hard to let that go. And you have to let these people that are like little pieces of your heart walking around outside you just do their thing and be who they're going to be.
Yeah. Wow. A lot of wisdom there. 7 kids later. Well, Katrina, do you have any last thoughts you want to share with the audience?
No, I would just encourage women to be proactive with their health. I think a lot of women feel guilty, like I don't want to spend that much money on me. It needs to go towards the kids or something. And honestly, you being healthy and being there for them is really what they would prefer every time.
It's so true. Did you want to just share about your book too that just came out?
Yeah. So I have a new book called Nutritional Pilates: Relieve Joint Pain, Lose Unwanted Weight, and Prevent Chronic Disease. And it's going into kind of a blueprint for, identifying when things aren't working. So a lot of the stuff that we talked about in here, but expanded out. And it's on Amazon. So there you go.
Go check it out. Well, Katrina, thanks again for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much. It was a joy.
I had such an inspirational talk with Katrina about her life experiences, being a mom to 7 kids. Absolutely blew my mind. And also running a business from a different state. And just her passion for really recognizing root cause resolution for health, and how symptoms are really such a blessing to help teach our body that there is an imbalance physically, chemically, or emotionally that's occurring that is creating that dis-ease or symptom within our body. And in lieu of masking those symptoms, we have the opportunity to investigate deeper and get to that root cause. And that includes cancer. So definitely, if you're interested in learning more about healing the body holistically from cancer, check out her book, Nutritional Pilates, and check her out on Facebook, Instagram at Nutritional Pilates, and at Katrina Foe, and at Personalized Pilates.